Hello. Today, I would like to show how I refactor some dplyr code to conform with recommendations that have been advertised at the Tidyverse blog. So if you're following the Tidyverse blog, you may have seen that across, the function across is coming with dplyr 1, and it's pretty cool. So I'm going to use it for the first time in a package that I'm developing. And what I'm going to do basically is what I read here in the blog, the recommendations for how to convert existing code. So I'm going to be working with a function that calls, that ends with at. So I'm going to be working with a range at and trying to convert it to the recommended arrange across. So calling across within a range. And I'm going to show basically a kind of breakdown of the steps that I'm following to mostly demonstrate refactoring techniques that allow you to change code in a relatively safe way. So let's go to our studio and show what I want to demonstrate. So first of all, let's prove that we are using the development version of dplyr. So right now, I installed this today. This is the version. It's not 1, but it will become version 1 when dplyr 1 is released. But this is the in development version of it. So the first thing I want to do is to show you how to create a branch, because I'm a relatively heavy user of the these PR helpers. And not many people, I've seen them using them around. So I would like to also show that. So basically the goal today is to refactor some code using the use these PR helpers. So let's do it. So I start from the master branch of this package that is using, relying on the released version of dplyr, and I want to create a branch to get it ready for merging a PR that adapts to dplyr 1 whenever it's released. So the first thing I do is I'm going to go to the console. I use, I have attached the tools already because I have it in my R profile, but for demonstration, let's attach it here again to convince you that all the functions that come with it are going to be available to me, which include the functions in use this. So I use PR init to start a branch that I will eventually push to the remote repository on GitHub. So I'm going to choose the branch name refactor to use across. Sounds like a reasonably informative branch name. I already see that a prompt to what I should do once I have made some changes in the branch. I should then PR push to send those changes to GitHub. So let's go to the terminal and run git status. So I have a bunch of aliases here that I use a lot. This is not a class on Git, so I'm going to just work as I usually do. If you're interested to spy how I do things, so I'm going to run git status with the alias GSS. I'm using the terminal and oh my CSH terminal, I think it's called, whatever. That's why it looks might look a little different to yours. So you can already see that I was before in the master branch and I'm now in the refactor to use across branch. So that's what I want. But if I ask for the log of this Git repo right now, I should see that this branch is pointing to the same commit than master because I have done no change so far. So let's do a git log. And I see effectively, let's expand this a little bit, that both the branch I have just created and master are both pointing to the same commit. And also, this is kind of synchronized with my origin branch, so the branch on my remote origin. By the way, let's see what remotes I have here. So the remote view, I have 2 remotes, one that is pointing to my personal account, origin, and another one that is pointing to upstream, where I'm pointing to the organization where I work for. So what I'm gonna do is to submit a PR from my own account into my organization's account to incorporate this change eventually. So we're good to go. The first thing I want to do now is to find the code that I want to change. So, what I want to do is to find functions that end with _at. I'm going to define that globally. Maybe something I could do is to find R scripts, but let's just run the simple find in files command from RStudio. And let's see what we get. Actually, it's not too much that I have, which is the reason why I chose this particular task for demonstration. So I have this function that is called prioritize at that I created. And it uses, the function is defined down here, and it uses the function that I want to change. It uses the function arrange at, and instead I want to use the function arrange and then call across with it. So this is where I want to make most changes. There's also other functions that call add, like modify add, but that comes from the poor package. And today I just want to focus on this across function in dplyr. So I'm going to change just this one function here and everything that relates to that. So now instead of running a search for add, I'm going to be a little bit more specific. What I want to change is arrange at. Yes, arrange at, and in particular, the function that I wrote, actually, the one that I want to refactor, is called prioritize at. Right, so this retrieves the lines of code that I need to be touching today, editing today to add this PR. Okay, so let's go to the function definition, prioritize at here, and to the particular line. Yeah, let's go to the function definition here. So here is the function that I want to change. And following the recommendations of the blog post in the tidyverse. So the first thing I'm going to do is to create a copy of this function here. So this is the first step in my refactoring. So I'm duplicating the function here. And I do that so that I can start changing one version of it without breaking code. So actually, before I do that, let me confirm that my code is running okay. So I'm gonna run all the tests. I'm pressing Shift, Control, and T to see that all tests currently pass. If I have any failing tests, then it's not a good idea to start touching any code, because then I won't know if what I'm doing is breaking anything else. So starting the refactoring with the confirmation that all my tests pass. Let's wait a few more minutes or seconds, hopefully. And in the meantime, there you go. So 177 tests passed and none failed, no warnings and no skip tests. So we are good to go. Actually, what I'm going to be running for a faster iteration is going to be just the test on this particular file, for example, which I created a key shortcut binding to run a test file, but basically you can find that here on addings. You can just click on run test file, and depending on which file you have open, the tests associated to that file will run, which are a lot less, and of course this runs a lot faster. So that's why I will be doing that, and I will be just pressing a keyword shortcut that I created for that to trigger that call. So okay, we are good to go. We have passing tests, so and I am now in a position to create a copy, and the new copy I'm just going to call it, instead of prioritize at, I'm going to call it prioritize across. And the reason that I do that is because I want to, instead of being the core function in that function that I created is the arrange bit. And because I want to change it from arrange at to arrange across, I'm going to call this new version prioritize across. So these changes should be safe. If I run my tests now, they should pass, right? That's my expectation. Let's see how that goes. And if they do pass, they do. Let's now create a little commit. The status, we can see what changed, and we should see that what changed, that we added this in green here. We see that we added this new function called prioritize across, which is, so far, it is an exact copy of prioritize at. So we are good to create a commit there. Let's create a commit with the message duplicate with a new name. And now if we call the log, we can see our new commit just here 2 seconds ago. So we have moved one little step from the commit, one commit away from master. Great. So the next step is to follow the recommendations on the blog. So let's go to the blog and see what we should do. So the blog says that if you want to update your existing code to across, instead of if, at, or all, it is generally straightforward. And if you have how you do that, so you call across, right? The first argument will be for at, the all second argument. So let's go step by step. So the first thing we need to do is to call across, and strip the if at. So I'm going to strip the at and then call across. So that's exactly what I want to do. So here I'm going to replace this by first strip the at, which I did, and now call across. Dplyr across, right? I mean, the package I want to be explicit, so dplyr across, which is available again in the development version of dplyr. And I added a parenthesis here, which I need to close around here. So we did what the blog post recommended, the stripping part and adding across, right? So we stripped at, we called across, and now for the at, which is the line that I need to read, the all second argument for at. Okay, the first argument of across will be the all second argument in what was before arrange at. So let's confirm that that is exactly what happens. Yeah, there you go. So at was before, so this argument here was before the second argument of arrange, the first argument being data, which because it's in a pipe, it's outside a pipe. So this at was the old second argument, and it's now the new first argument. And the rest is almost kind of good to go. What are things that I need to consider? Okay, let's see what are the argument names of across. So across, it doesn't have an argument called at, it has an argument called calls. So if I wanted to be explicit, I could say across, and the argument calls will take what before was at. And what else? Okay, the second argument of across is called f.fns, so f.fns, and this is easy to kind of trip in here. In arrange at, I was using funs, so now I need to remove the u to make it compatible. And then the ... takes any argument, extra argument that I want to pass to the function explain and detail here in fronts. So fine, I'm here I'm passing these arguments to via ... So I had to do nothing with this. With this argument, I had to change funs to .fns, and here I just want to be a little bit more explicit. That I'm using the .calls argument, so I'm calling calls equals at. So again, I have no test for this copy of the function. If I, but soon you will see that I'm going to be testing it based on all tests. So if I run the test now, they should all pass. So let's see if we can prove that. Let's go to the console here and run all the tests. And we are good to go. We see all green. Actually, let's move up a little bit. There you are. All the tests have just passed. So my next move is going to be to come here to the terminal, and this diff is what we just did. So you can see in green, the changes, and red what was the state of this file of this line before. So we're gonna create a new commit with the commit. We can say something like replace or use across. Let's do that. Use across. So we can confirm now in the log that we have added that commit, and all our tests pass. So we are good to continue with our refactoring. So let's see where we have prioritize at, and slowly we want to change every instance of prioritize at with prioritize across. So we want to use our function, the new function that we created, the one that is using across. We want to replace it progressively, slowly, step by step, with our new function, right? So let's do just that. First, let me see here in the hits where it would make sense to start my next step of the refactoring. So, for example, if I look into the tests, right, I see that here the word prioritize at appears in just the title of a test. So if I change that, it should be it shouldn't break anything, right? So that's one place where I could start changing things, for example. So let's confirm that that doesn't break anything. And here we go. Of course, it doesn't. Let's continue to, basically, I want to kind of remove out of my eyes the instances where that match prioritize at, to just focus on the few lines that I really need to concentrate on work. So this is something that I need to work on. So the easy move now would be to replace this other instance that is also in the test title. So it shouldn't break anything. Again, if you're paranoid like me, you can rerun your test to confirm that, all good. And then again, we run the global search for prioritize at to see where else we need to work. So we have matches in tests and in R, right? In R is, we have the definition of the original function, but we want to move away of that. What we want to do is to start using our prioritize across instead. So I'm going to ignore this one. Instead, the most reasonable step now is to start checking, testing that the function that we wrote is actually working as I expect. So I have a rate test for that. So let's go to the tests and change and see if I can replace prioritize at with my new prioritize across without breaking anything. So this is the risky bit. But I'm taking a risk at just one test. So if anything fails, I should see the problem right here, as opposed to like see everything break everywhere, which is what would happen if I just changed the name. Actually, I could demonstrate that first. So yeah, let's demonstrate that. So first, again, let's show that test pass. And now let's go to the definition of prioritize at. What would happen if I go to the definition of the function and I just change it to, say, across? To or whatever. So if I now run the tests, the original prioritize at has disappeared from my source code. So I see that my tests are failing. Just in this file, I see too many tests that had failed. And I no longer have the protection of tests to continue my refactoring. So I wouldn't do it. Let me move a little thing on my second screen for a second. Okay, so what I could do instead is leave the function, the original function alone, which is what we are doing, right? And working on this duplicate that we have just created. So going back to where we were, we are looking for the next candidate line of code that I want to change in this refactoring. So I suggested before doing this demo that a good place to work on is this line, for example, here, 143 on the test file, because I have already written the version prioritize across that implements the new across function that is running in dplyr1. So let's see if these tests now, now passes. So let's go to the console, clean this up for clarity, and run my test. Fingers crossed, and they pass. Great. So that means that my change here did not break any code, and that the recommendation that I read in the blog post worked. So the refactoring move that I was advised to do worked fine. It didn't break any code. So let's continue searching for prioritize across. Okay, now, prioritize at, which is what I want to remove. We have this other test that we want to change right now. And again, we can run tests to confirm that we haven't broken anything. Great, we're good to go again. So at this stage, we have done a few interesting changes that are worthwhile committing to checking in our version control system. So let's go here to the terminal, run a status, confirm that it's a file that changed, and maybe see what changed, confirm that we changed the title of this test, and also in the test itself, we replaced prioritize at with a new prioritize across that I have just written, the one that is using the across function that I want to demonstrate. And continuing, so the same thing we did in two places in tests. So, okay, so it makes sense to create a commit message. Replace with, or use now, let's do use prioritize across. But this is not finished really. This is work in progress. So I'm gonna go back to this commit and maybe amend it in a moment. But before I take a too long step, I want to make sure that my version control system is backing me up. So the log, this is what it looks like. We first duplicated a new function, the function, just giving it a new name. Then we used across inside our copy. Then we started using our copy, prioritize across. And this is work in progress. So I need to continue working on that. Okay, so let's continue to search for prioritize at. And now the only instances where it matches anything are here in the R file. We don't want to change this yet. We want to change, well, I mean, this is the definition and we are not using the function any longer. What I want to show now is, well, how to change these instances here. So let's, one thing I would kind of feel comfortable changing right now is this instances where the function that I created is being used in examples. So let's click there and let's move it, let's change it there. The first thing I want to do, so the examples are not running, not testing those particular lines of code in my tests with test that, but what I can do is I can run the test. So I can run examples, run examples. And I like to do fresh equals true, so that when the examples run, so it creates a new session basically. So nothing that I have in my environment now would contaminate those examples. So why do I do that? Okay, I do that just to confirm to myself that the examples run without any error, notable error. So I can scroll up here and I see that there is no errors. So that's fine. That's what I wanted to do, confirm. But now what happens if I change prioritize to across and rerun the examples? So I should, again, so if I, my change worked well as expected without breaking anything, then they should pass. And they do. So these examples run fine. There is no error here. So we're good to go. We have changed then another instance and I'm left with, so I'm identifying the calls in examples because they start with the Roxygen comment, right? So I'm gonna click this one here and change it. Maybe rerun my examples if I want to confirm. And in the meantime, I can search for the last example instance in examples here. So let's check this one. Well, yes. And now here in the examples, we change the last instance. And we were searching for matches. And we are left with just these two calls. Let's first maybe create a commit. What I want to do is amend the previous. So first, let's add this file, these changes to the staging area. So let's do a status to confirm that. So this is green, showing that I have added the last changes to the staging area. And what I want to do is amend the previous commit because remember it was work in progress and everything is going fine. My test pass and my my test pass and the examples pass too with no errors. So I can commit. I can amend the previous commit. The message was fine. I would just leave it at that. So no more changes to be committed. Everything is now in the previous commit. So the last two commits have been squashed into one. So again, let's go back to searching for prioritize add and let's try to work in these two places. Prioritize add here, what is this? Okay, so this is where the function is being used. I can change across here and rerun the test for this particular file. So this is the first time I actually using the function in inside code that I've written. You can think of prioritize across as a helper of another function, and now using it inside that function for the first time. So it's a very interesting time to run my tests. So I'm going to start running them here on the console, just the one file that I have done the change, and it looks that everything is fine. In the meantime, I could run all tests to confirm that I haven't broken anything. But if the changes in this file, I'm pretty confident that they should pass. Fingers crossed. And you can see them here on the right while we do other things. So let's go back to searching. Well, now the only instance of prioritize at, the one that was using the old dplyr code, is the function definition, which means that the function is used nowhere, right? So I should be able to remove it completely, and the code should continue to pass all the time in the green zone of my tests. So before I do that, I think I could commit, I could add the changes that I did before. There they are, and maybe for a third time, squash this last change into the previous commit. So amend the previous commit, and I can now remove the work in progress because I have already done it. So I have used prioritize across. So nothing else to commit. And yeah, so if I search for prioritize add, again, the only thing that remains to remove is this function. So we can just remove it. All this code we can remove, and we only have prioritize across now. Okay, so did this work? Okay, this is a good time to run all the tests again. In my console, I can run them. I can run, if I want, this one test to confirm that it's all good to go. It says my tests are fabulous. That's great. Thanks. Thanks for that prize. And I think we are almost there, except that let's see what we are actually. We can commit this one change where we remove the old version. So let's commit that. Remove guys at. So this is what our changes so far look like. We first duplicated the old function, then we started using across in the new copy. Then we basically use the duplicate everywhere, and then we remove the original implementation. Maybe this, the commit messages could be better, or certainly not maybe, but I'm not going to worry about that. As far as I understand what I'm doing, I can always amend those commits at the rebasing stage, or maybe when I squash the PR in before merging it into the upstream master. So we are good to go. I see all green here. We have passed all tests. And the only thing I would do now is to use arguments, names that are more aligned with the new implementation. So the new implementation uses across, and across has no argument called at. So it's kind of confusing that the argument name here is at, right? But internally, function across uses calls. So I would like this at to become calls. But what would happen if I do it right away? Let's confirm. Okay, so if I do that and run my test, everything should break because I am calling the argument at in other places. So what we want to do is to move a little slower. So we're going to leave the at, and we want to add the .calls argument. And to begin easy, we can just say, well, this argument is going to be equal to at. So it's going to take whatever we pass to at, and that's going to be it. So I just added to the function definition for now, and I'm not going to use it so far. I just want to run tests and see what happens to see if this is a safe refactoring move. Let's run the tests. So adding the argument to the definition didn't break anything. So that seems like a reasonable next step in my refactoring. Let's add that and create a commit message. It's work in progress. Oops. There you go. Games calls. There you go. But we now need to start replacing every instance of that at with a call. So how do we go about that? Okay, so one thing I will do is search for prioritize across at. That should give me all the time, the places where I need to kind of look for code to change. I can't simply go do what I did before. Like if I go to tests and change, or maybe yes, actually, let's see if I can now. Let's see, I'm using it. let's see what happens if I just call calls. I suspect this is gonna fail. I'm not really sure. Oops, sorry, I didn't want to do that. I wanted to run my tests. Let's see. Failed. Okay, so actually it's a good demonstration of a failing test, which we haven't had a lot so far. So I don't want to do that because I entered the red zone and that's not a place where I want to be. I want to be in green zone. So I undo what I just did and rerun my test to confirm that my undoing is worked as I expected. So I want to stay here in the green zone. Okay. So I had to change something else. What else could that be? Was a minimum step that I can take without breaking code that kind of takes me where I want to go. Let's see. Oh no, what I want to do is across with the argument at. There you go. So this is the code I want to work for. So I just demonstrated that it's a bad idea to change it here because I still don't have. I'm not using the argument.call, so it is here where I need to work. This is an example. So if this broke, this will always also break. So let's work here to see if I can implement actually the use of, is that the place? Prioritize across. No, in the definition. So let's go to the definition of the function here, right? So what I want to do is to start using calls, right? So now here, instead of saying, okay, calls from across takes calls from prioritize across, sorry, instead of saying calls from dplyr across takes at from prioritize across, I want to say calls from across takes calls from prioritize across. So that seems to be the most reasonable next step. So if I do that, what do I get? And why would that work? Well, because calls is already defined and it is identical, it's equal to at. So let's see if that works. Is that a good refactoring step? Only my tests will tell me the answer to that. And it looks like it is. So I see that I stay in the green zone. So that makes sense. So let's go commit this change. We worked hard. We took maybe a couple of minutes to kind of come up with this refactoring step. So we want to commit it. But let's see what was my last commit against calls. Okay, let's use it. Let's do another commit. Use calls before again. Now it's being used. And let's see what other instances, what's my next refactoring step. So, well, because now we are using calls, I could start basically changing at with calls and it should work. So here in at, I'm going to change calls and go to my console and run my tests. And they pass. Perfect. So we do, I mean, this there is another move that is just about the same. So I could, commit and then come back and do this one. Or if, I feel sufficiently confident that the next step is a safe step, I can take it and, go a little farther before I commit. So let's do that. I'm pretty confident that this seems to be the same kind of change that I did before. Let's run my tests to confirm that I didn't break anything. It looks good. So now I can see the diff to confirm what I did. Yes, so add became calls. Great. And I think I can also amend the previous commit because it all relates to using calls. So I think it makes sense to do it that way. Right? Maybe I'll need to later maybe rebase to change this message and remove the whip from the beginning of that message. And now, okay, what else do we need to change? Okay, we have still this instance here in an example. So again, what I could do is to run examples to make sure that they still work. And only after I confirm that nothing breaks, I could do, in my examples, I could do calls, right? And I'm going to run fresh, which I forgot to do before, sorry. So let's see if this works, then that's a good move. It is. And let's see where else we have paradise across at. Okay, in this place where we are actually using this kind of helper that I built. So let's change it here. Let's test again. And it's working. Okay, so that's you know, kind of finished. If I try to match for that, I find nothing. So it's a good time to also run all the tests and also checks. So for now, I'm running all the tests while I create my commit here. Remember, we have this diff here that we have changed. So I'm gonna amend the previous commit again because we are using calls to refer to the same problem. And maybe I should revise to fix that work in progress thing. So git rebase interactive against master, and the one we want to change is this one. I want to reward this with something else. So I'm going to remove the work in progress, use capital G, and there we go. So now my log looks a little cleaner. We first duplicated a function with a new name, actually. We used across, we changed, we started using then we used across inside this copy helper that I'm using, then use that function in a bunch of places, then remove the original implementation, then my helper gained the calls argument, and then I used it everywhere. All the tests pass. I'm going to run the checks in the meantime while we finish this demo. And that's it, pretty much. So while the checks run, I'm going to run for one more time. Actually, no, I forgot to push. So the last thing that we want to do is, once that we have a clean log there, with the small commits, we can push now this and create a PR and then ask for a review to some colleague, hopefully. If we have one at hand, we can pick the brain. It's always a good idea to have someone else's eyes on your code. So the way I'm going to push is with a PR helper, PR push. And this is going to do a bit of work for me. Each step that the function does is described there. When you call it, you get it as an informative message. And then you are kind of dropped in this interface on your web browser where you see all the commits that we have just created. We can confirm that the branch, the commits come from the branch where we actually want them to come, that they come also from the fork that I want to use, and that all those changes that I have just done will want to be proposed to the right place. So in this case, the master branch in the upstream repository, which is a repository hosted in the organization where I work. So I'm going to go ahead and hit there in create pull request. Actually, I have like an issue associated with this, I think. So let me see which issue that is. Prepare maintenance release for dplyr 1. So this is issue 173. So we can say closes 173. Yeah. And maybe I can also copy the link to the to where I learned how to refactor this function. I'm going to create a pull request. And maybe here I'm going to ask Jackson to review my PR. All these checks start to run. So that's it. I'm going to wait for Jackson's feedback before we merge that. And also, I'm going to wait for all these checks to see how they go. Actually, one thing that I forgot I could add in my PR right now is to use, those checks should fail unless I tell my description file to use the development version of dplyr. So I should use dev package, use dev package dplyr. So that will, let me show you in the diff what it did. So, it changed dplyr to the dplyr development version of it and added dplyr to remote. So only now, I think let's commit this. Use the dplyr well, and let's synchronize, because we already pushed that PR, so now we can synchronize it with these new changes. So basically, this PR sync will make sure that the upstream master doesn't have any new change that my PR doesn't have locally, and same thing in case the same thing is going to pull also changes if there is any from the PR on origin, which is my user accounts PR branch. So it integrates everything and then pushes it back to origin. But we are looking at my origin from a PR in my upstream repo. So let's see what that looks like. Let's go back here. I'm going to refresh the web browser, and here you see that the last commit that I pushed via PR sync is now already here. Use dplyr devel. I can click here to see what that looks like, and this is almost the end. I can see, yes, this is the last change that I did via the function use dev package. So, okay, I hope that Jackson comes here and reviews my PR soon. And that's all I wanted to show you for now. I leave you here with the, again, with the blog post from dplyr showing how to convert existing code to adapt to dplyr 1. Thank you. See you next time.